Hi everybody, this is a bonus episode. It was originally designed just to be for my Substack. I wrote this piece. I think this is too important a topic and it covers a lot of issues that I just feel my audience needs to hear. I think it's a long read, so maybe just listening to it, listening at 1.5 speed or 2 if you can handle it, might just be an easier way to digest what I'm about to say. So I spent the whole day working on this, folks. I have to admit, it's kind of made me quite grumpy just thinking about the topic. But you'll understand why as I dive into it. So let me just read out the Substack, okay? So it's titled Repackaging the Vaccine Paradigm. So I woke up this morning to a flood of text messages and emails about a podcast featuring Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong on the Tucker Carlson Show, titled You're Being Lied to About Cancer, How It's Caused and How to Stop It. Descriptions ranged from it's fascinating and it's brilliant to stunning and must see. Naturally, I was quite curious. Bleary-eyed, I opened up my Spotify and started listening to the podcast. But here's the thing. I've become far less excitable over the last 5 years, especially when it comes to anything about COVID or vaccine related. So I listened to the episode, and these are my thoughts. First, who exactly is Patrick Soon-Shiong? I hadn't heard anything from him during the COVID years. No opposition to lockdowns, mandates, or vaccines. So I dug in. Like Elon Musk, he's actually South African American. He's a businessman, investor, medical researcher, transplant surgeon, and most notably the inventor of a chemotherapy drug called Abraxane. Now that alone made alarm bells ring for me. I mean, what is Abraxane? What's this guy's net worth? I mean, he sounds like a wealthy dude. I was shocked to discover that, according to Bloomberg, his net worth is $11.3 billion. He's called the richest man in Los Angeles and one of the wealthiest doctors in the world. So far, nothing I've discovered suggests he's a dissident or a freedom fighter. Along with his work in cancer drugs, he's founded a network of healthcare, biotech, and AI startups. He's the executive director of the Wireless Health Institute at the University of California and a visiting professor at Imperial College London. Long-time listeners will know I am no fan of Imperial College, home to a certain famous modeler, which, and Imperial College, as far as I can see, is one of the nexuses of academic evil. Anyway, let's get back to Abraxane. It's a nanoparticle albumin-bound version of Plaxitaxel. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. And that's used to treat breast, lung, and pancreatic cancers. It's manufactured and sold in the US by Celgene. Now, you might recognize the name Celgene because Angus Dalgleish has worked with them too, repurposing drugs, I think, like thalidomide. What a small world, isn't it? But let's not get carried away. Some might say, hey, he developed a cancer drug. What's the problem with that? Well, let's look at Paxlotaxel's track record. Advanced breast cancer, median overall survival is 18 to 30 months. Progression-free survival is 6 to 12 months. Ovarian cancer, advanced 5-year survival is 30 to 50%. Non-small cell lung cancer, advanced median survival is 10 to 14 months. Pancreatic cancer with chemo, 8 to 11 months. Without, 6 to 7 months. Honestly, at best, you're buying a few months. This chemotherapy drug, is not a cure. And how does this drug work? Well, it disrupts cell division, all cell division. And that includes every healthy cell in your body, which is why you get side effects like hair loss, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, appetite loss, muscle and joint pain, peripheral neuropathy, low blood counts, immunosuppression, allergic reactions, heart and liver toxicity, lung issues, mouth sores, infertility, and actually increased risk of certain blood cancers like leukemia. Let's get back to Patrick. As for his business background, in 1991, he started VivoRx, which focused on diabetes and cancer. In 1997, he founded APP Pharmaceuticals and sold it in 2008 for $4.6 billion. Good for him. He developed Abraxane under Abraxas Bioscience and sold that to Celgene for $2.9 billion, earning himself personally $533 million. He founded Nant Health in 2007 and Nant Works in 2011. He was an early investor in Zoom. Lucky him. He's invested in bio-renewables, and he owns 28% of a European graphene-based company. Graphene. Wow. Yeah, you heard that correctly. And he's also bought the Los Angeles Times. Why not? And like many billionaires, no surprise, he has his own foundation, the Soon-Shiong Research Foundation, which has partnered with those lovely people, Bill and Hillary. Yeah, down at, the Clinton Foundation. And he also donated to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, the Hillary Clinton. Let's just put that down to poor judgment. He also met with Donald Trump twice in an unsuccessful attempt, apparently, to land a role in the administration. Although in this podcast he says that he was offered one or wasn't. I'm not sure. I mean, why am I focusing so much on this guy's background and not the podcast? Well, I'll come to the podcast in a second, but really because it matters. It really matters who we're being told to listen to, who's getting the airtime, and what might their agenda be. Soon-Shiong is clearly deeply entrenched in the establishment of Big Pharma, allopathic cancer medicine. He literally invented and marketed a chemotherapy drug and made billions out of it. And now suddenly he's on Tucker Carlson talking about COVID and cancer. Is this an insider billionaire, Big Pharma man and philanthropist who's suddenly seen the light and is going to put a wrecking ball on the evil deeds and expose what's been taking place? Is this why all my friends and listeners and supporters are getting so excited and telling me, you need to listen to this guy? Is this what they've all been waiting for? For someone from within the evil system breaking ranks and starting to demolish everything? Or is it just another example of controlled opposition, limited hangout, or just more bullshit? Right. Well, you guys decide. Let's get back to the podcast and find out. So Patrick Soon-Shiong recounts being invited to DC, Washington, DC, by the CEO of the Andrew Jackson Foundation, where he gave a 3-hour talk, and he says, no slides, just a talk, to a room filled with top brass from BARDA. Come to that in a second. DOD, Department of Defense, NIAID, NIH, the US Army, Walter Reed Military Hospital, and more. So folks, just in case you missed this one, BARDA stands for Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. Their mission is to develop medical countermeasures that address the public health and medical consequences of chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. Walter Reed is one of the top US Army hospitals. And remember, the DOD was at this meeting too. Who the hell gets invited to present to these kind of people? Definitely not me. And remind me, wasn't it Sasha Latipova and Catherine Watts and Debbie Lerman talking about the DOD involvement behind the pandemic and the whole countermeasure issue? I'm sure this has got nothing to be concerned about. And what did Patrick tell them, this top brass? He said that COVID is oncogenic. Now, if you don't know what that means, it means COVID causes cancer. Yeah, let me just repeat that. Patrick states that COVID causes cancer. He cited a study where they biopsied the colons of young people and allegedly found replicating COVID virus 2 years post-infection. Replicating for 2 years. Now, this isn't a discussion about vaccine side effects. This is a continuation of the virus fear narrative. He's not talking about vaccine spike protein or mRNA at this point in the podcast. He's talking about the virus causing cancer. Meanwhile, the same government agencies that pushed the lockdowns and the mandates, potentially were behind the bioweapon, are sitting there listening to him, according to him. There's no mention of the vaccine at this point. No mention of the spike protein products produced by the shots. Just a message, be afraid of COVID, it's a cancer risk. As far as I'm concerned, folks, this isn't truth-telling, this is narrative control. Anyway, let's listen to what else this guy Patrick has to say. Now, if you go back to the opening line, you'll hear Tucker say, "You spent 50 years working on cancer and treating cancer." Now, folks, just remember that. This is an authority figure that's been rolled out to us, an expert. He's part of the same people who are behind a system a failed system of surgery and chemotherapy when cancers can be prevented and treated. But we're not allowed to talk about those things. Just look up the Cancer Act. We can only use their surgeries, their radiation therapy, and their chemotherapy drugs. And this man is part of that system, that failed system. So right at the beginning of the podcast, at 1 minute and 21 seconds, Patrick recognizes that the big problem is that not only is cancer going up, but there's a marked increase in cancer in young people. Now, in one of my recent podcasts, Debbie Evans discussed the explosion of cancer and the sinister agenda behind it. Folks, check out that podcast if you haven't already. Rising cancer rates are a definite phenomenon. And it's only happened in the last 5 years where it's just exploded. And there's a big push now for cancer treatment in this group. Now, the question is, what's driving this? I think, and you guys probably agree, that the COVID mRNA shots have a big part to play in it. The question is, does Patrick feel the same way? Now, at 3 minutes and 55 seconds in, Patrick mentions that there's a non-infectious pandemic of cancer. Well, I think everybody and their dog can see that this is the case. There's no arguing with that. But the question is, what's causing it, Patrick? At 5 minutes and 15 seconds, he accepts that there's even such a thing as turbo cancer. People who were in remission suddenly getting advanced recurrent cancer, or people with cancer getting diagnosed and dying within months. Well, that's great. That's really nice that someone in mainstream medicine is acknowledging that turbo cancers are real, because we've been gaslit for quite a long time. But again, many of us, including our pets, have already been talking about this for quite a while. Yeah, my cat literally meows about this whenever I talk about it. This isn't anything new. And again, the cause? Well, he says it's immune suppression from viral infections. Doesn't mention mRNA at this point in the podcast. Doesn't mention the shot. Doesn't mention about mechanisms of vaccine-induced immune dysregulation. He pivots to his own solutions. Clinical trials enhancing natural killer cells, IL-15 superagonists, and proprietary therapies. It's all immune-based, all biotech, all his. He even says we need to clear the virus. He doesn't say not the spike protein, not the LMPs, he explicitly says the virus. And he conflates long COVID with vaccine injury. And still no mention of SV40, DNA contamination, or immune escape. The punchline? He says that mRNA vaccines don't work because they're antibody-based. So what do we need instead? T-cell vaccines. His vaccines. At 6 minutes and 21 seconds, Tucker Carlson asks, so what could possibly be causing this? And Patrick responds with this whole immunology breakdown, saying that anything related to infection like TB, HIV, hepatitis, or COVID can affect the immune function. He explains that these immune cells are there to recognize infected cells and kill them. As you and I are sitting here today, our stem cells are constantly growing to replenish your body, your heart, your tissues. And if you don't have this, you won't have a functioning body. I mean, so far so good. And here's the key. Some of those growing cells are also mutating, and the body's natural killer cells are designed to recognize them and destroy them. He calls this nature's responder. That's your mechanism of protection. That's how we stay in a state of equilibrium. But the moment either the tumor finds a way to hide, or the tumor suppresses the immune system that would destroy it, cancer grows. He talks about T regulatory cells and myeloid-derived suppressor cells, basically saying that the immune system has suppressor cells and cancer hijacks those. So his 50-year challenge, he says, has been, how do we expose the tumor? How do we decrease suppressor cells and increase killer cells? He believes that cancer is, at its core, a problem of immune evasion, that cancer, to some extent, is a problem with your immune system. I have an issue with this. At 9 minutes and 57 seconds, Patrick finally says, cancer is essentially a problem of the immune system. But at no point does he mention the metabolic origins of cancer, no mention of toxicity or environmental toxins, no talk of vitamin A, retinol, nutrient deficiencies, or anything else. Not even a squeak about the mRNA jabs. Nope. Just, it's an immune problem. Then, at 11 minutes, he suddenly brings up toxins like PFAS, and more importantly, viral infections, which he says is very important. He finally, and I'll come back to that in a second, he finally mentions that inflammation is also a problem, that inflammation is suppressing the immune system. Then at 14 minutes, Patrick makes a big admission. Everything they've been doing, including himself, for the last 50 years wasn't necessarily wrong, but it wasn't enlightened. Okay? He says that they were actually suppressing the immune system, and now they realize that was a mistake. Interesting. At 14 minutes and 57 seconds, Tucker Carlson jumps in and says, something is suppressing people's immune system. What is that? At 15 minutes and 18 seconds, Tucker makes it more direct. Could it be COVID, or could it be the mRNA vaccines? And here comes the bombshell moment. Tucker actually says, do you think they're related? And Patrick? He dodges. He responds by going into historical examples. He starts talking about viruses that cause cancer, hepatitis viruses that cause liver cancer, human papilloma virus, HPV, causing cervical cancer, HIV causing Kaposi's cancer, Epstein-Barr virus causing certain lymphomas. So what's he doing here? Well, folks, he's pivoting away from vaccines and framing the virus itself, COVID, as the problem. Not the spike protein from the vaccine, not the mRNA, not the LNPs, not the SV40 promoters. Just COVID is like other cancer-causing viruses. And at this point, Patrick starts to say that COVID, the spike protein, whether from the virus or the vaccine, targets the ACE receptor causing inflammation. And then he makes a crucial admission. He says that whether it's the infection or the vaccine, it might be related to cancer. He still doesn't clarify which is worse. He's conflating them. At 18 minutes and 8 seconds, Patrick claims, I think COVID is the persistence of the COVID virus. At 18 minutes and 8 seconds, Patrick claims, I think long COVID is the persistence of the COVID virus. Not the spike protein, not the mRNA, not the immune response. Notice, he's talking about the virus. He believes long COVID is because of a replicating virus that stays in your body and causes suppression of the natural killer cells. Then, at around 19 minutes and 21 seconds, Patrick says, the answer is we need to clear the virus from the body. Now, again, note, he didn't say clear the spike protein. He didn't say clear vaccine byproducts or contaminants. He didn't say reverse mRNA expression. He said we need to clear the virus. And in the minute prior, he and Tucker are conflating the spike protein from the virus and the spike protein from the vaccine, treating them as if they're the same thing. And this is where I really, really differ from this guest. You just need to listen to my podcast with Ignored Science, where we list 30 to 40 different mechanisms of cancer triggered by mRNA vaccines. Even Angus Dalgleish, who I've got issues with, admits there are at least 10 different ways cancer can develop from mRNA tech. But our friend Patrick, he doesn't talk about that. He talks about viruses being oncogenic. He talks about clearing the virus from the body. He's not talking about LNPs, SV40, DNA contamination, or the long tail of vaccine-related immune suppression. He's muddying the waters, conflating it all, and making it seem like the problem is COVID and just the spike protein, not the delivery mechanism. At 22 minutes, Patrick claims that 15 million people have long COVID. But my question is, are they vaccine injured? Have they been vaccinated? How do you know these people aren't suffering from post-vaccine syndrome? This whole idea that long COVID is a persistent viral infection, I'm tired of it. We had ME before that, chronic fatigue syndrome before that. We had fibromyalgia. Now we've just renamed it to post-viral COVID. Is that really the case? Or are these people vaccine injured? Now, what's interesting is that he goes back to the meeting with BARDA and the DOD, and he talks about how they published a paper showing a replicating virus in the colon 2 years out. And that's kind of fascinating because I'm still on the fence whether there's even such a thing as a COVID virus. I mean, has it actually been isolated? What proof is there? What mechanism have they shown that proves this virus is replicating in the body? Patrick then talks about how he was scared of this virus. COVID. He was studying it. He was worried about it. So what is this doing? It's just promoting the narrative that COVID is something to be feared and that something needs to be done about it. At 27 minutes and 50 seconds, Patrick actually says it's a dangerous virus. And he said that during the pandemic in March 2020, he got his entire team of hundreds of people to stop everything and focus solely on COVID because it needed to develop a vaccine to clear the virus. Now, this is very interesting because vaccines have never been about clearing viruses from the body. Vaccines have always been supposedly about training your immune system to recognize a virus before it really infects you so that you can fight it off quickly. They're preventative. I've never heard of a vaccine that's meant to clear an existing infection. So this is new to me. Maybe we're just dancing around semantics. Maybe it's a language thing. But Patrick is making it clear. I believe in vaccines is what he's saying. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I don't believe in vaccines anymore, okay? I really don't. I think the whole science is flawed. But this is a pharma guy, a mainstream doctor, a billionaire. He believes in cancer vaccines and a vaccine to treat COVID, which he describes as a dangerous virus. And we all now know if it did exist, it wasn't lethal. And there was no increase in all-cause mortality. So I'm having serious issues with this guy, I'll be honest with you. So now here comes the treatment solution. Patrick says he actually wrote a paper arguing that COVID is like cancer and cancer is like COVID. Wow. And guess what the treatment is that he recommends? Yep, you guessed it, a T-cell vaccine. At 29 minutes and 20 seconds, Patrick drops the big bombshell. The fault with vaccines so far is that they've all been based on antibodies. So the problem with vaccines isn't that they're loaded with toxic junk and simply don't work and are based on flawed studies, or that they're causing immune suppression, or that they're experimental gene therapy. Nope. The problem, according to Patrick, is that they're just not the right kind. We need T-cell vaccines. We need natural killer cell vaccines. We need to augment the immune system. Antibodies aren't enough. Folks, do you see how nefarious this is? He's not challenging the vaccine paradigm. He's rebranding it. He's pivoting, not breaking ranks. Vaccines aren't bad. They were just flawed. We weren't doing them properly. Let's try a new version. And then what's incredible is that he says, in March 2020, I developed a vaccine. And you guessed it, for COVID. Using the same cancer vaccine platform the NCI had already tested for HPV and colon cancer. And he thought the same platform could then be used to treat COVID. So again, here we are. A cancer vaccine is being repurposed to treat a respiratory virus. Sound familiar? Yeah, just like Angus Dalgleish, a cancer vaccine researcher who also tried to roll out his own COVID vaccine. What is it with these guys? At 39 minutes and 16 seconds, Patrick says that antibody-based vaccines are good because they may reduce the viral load. And that's something Trump did well. But then he pivots again. He then says, you need a next generation vaccine to clear the virus. So what's he really arguing? That we need two types of vaccines, neither of which are really traditional vaccines? You've got the mRNA tech that's antibody-based, and you've got a T-cell vaccine, which is his product. Then he admits what we all know. mRNA vaccines don't clear the virus. Yeah, of course they don't. They just create spike protein, turning your body into a spike factory. Apparently, according to what they say, they were never designed to clear a virus. At 41 minutes and 20 seconds, Patrick states, the rise in cancer is because of things like PFAS, red dye, and COVID, the virus. That's his list. Not SV40, lipid nanoparticles, synthetic mRNA, DNA contamination, oncogenic insertion events, spike protein persistence, altered immune pathways. Nope. Just PFAS, red dye, and COVID. Guys, this is the expert being rolled out and being lauded and celebrated and congratulated by so-called awakened people. At 42 minutes, Patrick makes his real point. The problem with the vaccines isn't what's in them. The problem is they just don't clear the virus. So once again, it's not the mRNA tech, not the LNPs, not the SV40 promoters, not the immune evasion mechanisms. If that's It's that they don't do enough. That's it. So what's his solution? We need a better vaccine. And it's even got a name. A bioshield. His bioshield. Kid you not. Now, at 48 minutes and 35 seconds, Patrick does say something we agree with. He says Francis Collins is not a good guy. Fair enough. Very few of us would argue with that. Then at 48 minutes and 58 seconds, he reveals that Peter Thiel nominated him for a role. I was like, wait, what? Peter Thiel? Like, how'd you know this guy? Peter Thiel? What's he doing nominating? What's a billionaire tech guy nominating another billionaire for high-profile medical positions at the NIH? Apparently, the nomination was for the head of the NIH. Ask yourself, who is Peter Thiel to nominate, and what influence does he have in any administration? You know, why is he recommending Patrick Soon-Shiong, another billionaire, to run public health? And folks, this is the same Peter Thiel, head of Palantir and the Lavender AI targeting program that the IDF has been using to kill thousands of people in Gaza. Wow, just wow. At 50 minutes and 43 seconds, Tucker Carlson asked for clarification. He says, but my understanding was that a vaccine is administered to a healthy person to prevent them from getting a disease. You're describing a product that you inject into an infected person and it cures infection. That's a crucial distinction, folks. Vaccines were never meant to be therapeutics. They were supposed to prime the immune system. But what Patrick is talking about now is that a vaccine that cures an active infection. So what are we doing here? We're just shifting definitions. We've seen this before, haven't we? Remember the definition of a vaccine? We're rewriting the rule book, and you can start to see the game plan emerging. With the COVID shots, they got the spike protein into billions of people. And now they're pivoting to say, well, okay, that was round one. Now let's come back with round two, a new shot. This one that will clear the spike protein we just injected into you. So now billions of people might be injected again, but this time with Patrick's cure. Welcome to BioShield TM era. At 58 minutes and 40 seconds, Patrick talks about a conversation he had with Robert Kennedy Jr. He says that people accuse RFK of being an anti-vaxxer, but they talked about polio vaccines, and Patrick was saying the issue isn't vaccines, it's what we put into them, the adjuvants, the mercury. So again, the problem isn't the idea of vaccination, it's just the ingredients, guys. Now, folks, again, I don't know about you, but if you listen to people like Roman Bristianic and Suzanne Humphreys and read Dissolving Illusions, you know there's a big question here. What was even causing polio? Was it the polio virus? Or was it pesticides, DDT, arsenic, and other neurotoxins poisoning children and causing paralysis? Because I'm not convinced it was a virus. I'm definitely not convinced the vaccine was the answer. But Patrick? Well, no surprise, he still believes. At the 1 hour mark, Patrick shifts the tone. He says the problem is that small biotech companies are being throttled and we need more biotech innovation, in places like China and India are racing ahead. So now it's not just about health, it's about industry. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about investors. This is a typical pharma philanthro-capitalist pivot. We need to innovate, and that means funding our companies. At 1 hour and 6 minutes, Tucker asks a great question. What can you do to strengthen your immune system? And Patrick eventually responds with 3 things. Sleep, sunlight, healthy food, and gut biome. Great. I'm with him on all that. That's probably the most grounded thing he says the entire interview. But then he begins to pull apart oncologists. He criticizes the current model of chemo and radiation. And he's right. The model is failing. But wait, Tucker asks, if I got cancer, what would you recommend? And this is where it gets really surprisingly funny. Patrick responds by saying, you need to use just a small amount of chemotherapy. Not a lot, just a little. Just enough to smoke out the cancer. His words, I kid you not. He says that low-dose chemo is basically to expose the tumour. And then what? Well, then you use Patrick's BioShield, his natural killer cell treatment. And radiotherapy? Well, no, that's not great, but if you use just a tiny little dose, it can help. So let's break that down. What Patrick is saying is use small-dose chemo, small-dose radiation, and his proprietary immunotherapy. That's the new recipe. It's not a revolution. It's a refinement of the same failing approach, repackaged with biotech branding. Now, at 1 hour, 20 minutes and 56 seconds, Patrick says, we could become the American Red Cross for cancer. He's literally talking about turning it into a foreign policy. He says, use these innovations as foreign policy. What does that even mean? Export cancer therapeutics to other countries as part of international relations? This is sounding less like a doctor and more like a CEO pitching investors on a biotech IPO. At 1 hour, 21 minutes and 13 seconds, Tucker asked directly, was it wise to give everyone these Moderna and Pfizer vaccines? And here comes the moment. Patrick says, I think it's a bit silly. I think it's unwise to keep on giving this nonsense. He actually says this nonsense. Was that a little Freudian slip, maybe? But then he quickly catches himself. I shouldn't say that. I should be careful calling it nonsense. Too late, buddy. You said it. He doesn't give a yes or no answer. He waffles. And this is important. I've had guests like that before as well, folks. Because he's a billionaire doctor with biotech investments who's just accidentally called the mRNA campaign nonsense, then immediately walked it back. Then at 1 hour, 22 minutes and 16 seconds, Patrick says something huge. These mRNA technologies incorporate into your DNA and change your DNA. Now, folks, have we not been saying this for a while? Have we not been cancelled and ridiculed and called crazy loons for claiming this? It's out now. But now someone from within the system is saying it out loud. But let's be honest, for most of us, this is all old news. We didn't need a billionaire insider to validate what independent researchers, doctors, and whistleblowers have already been saying for years. Just because someone from the establishment finally says it doesn't mean they're suddenly a truth teller and a good one. And then at around 1 hour and 27 minutes, Patrick says that sometimes the vaccine can cause issues like brain fog and sometimes it's the virus. Duh. He says it's all about the spike. But this is where I disagree with him fundamentally. Go back and listen to my podcast with Ignored Science or read their Substack. There are dozens of different mechanisms, not just spike protein, by which the mRNA shots can cause immune dysfunction, inflammation, and yes, cancer. But Patrick, he reduces all of it to one thing. It's the spike. That's it. So let's put this all in one place, folks. Just so we're clear, here are some of the mechanisms of cancer from the mRNA vaccines that are being ignored. It's a big list. Forgive me. You can skip forward if you don't like it. 1. SV40 promoters targeting the nucleus with foreign DNA. 2. Insertional mutagenesis. 3. N1-methyl pseudouridine suppressing T-cell response. 4. Inhibition of tumor suppressor cells, genes like BRCA and P53. 5. IgG4 antibody shift promoting immune evasion. 6. Disrupted interferon response. 7. Vasculitis permitting metastasis. 8. Endothelial dysfunction. 9. Disrupted intracellular communication. 10. Hypoxia, red blood cell desaturation. 11. Microenvironment priming favorable to cancer. 12. Mitochondrial dysfunction. 13. Inflammatory LMP transport into tissues and bone marrow. 14. DNA contamination leading to systemic spike protein expression. 15. Impaired DNA repair. 16. Frameshift mutations causing aberrant proteins. 17. Disruption of RNA protein binding networks. 18. Inflammatory cascade induction. 19. Lymphopenia. 20. Renin-angiotensin system dysregulation. 21. Immune checkpoint PDL1 bypass. 22. C-gas sting pathway activation with DNA contamination. 23. Somatic hypermutation. 24. Fibrin-induced NK cell suppression. 25. Thymus involution reduced regulatory effector T-cell balance. 26. Microbiome dysbiosis. 27. Increased STAT3 production. 28. Increased Th17 production. 29. Autoimmunity triggers RA, SLE, vasculitis. 30. T-cell exhaustion. I'm exhausted. Now, did this great expert that everyone is excited about mention any of this? Why don't you just go down to Ignored Science Substack or William Mackessy's and have a look at what they're saying? That's just a portion of what's being ignored, folks. Towards the end, believe it or not, Patrick starts to play the victim. He says he's being sidelined, that he has all these facilities, all this knowledge, all these solutions, but nobody's listening. If only there was political support, if the deep state weren't against him, and the fact he's sitting and speaking to BARDA and DOD and then says, this just makes me laugh, maybe we'd all be saved by now. And you almost want to get the violin out, right? I mean, a little tiny violin just playing away. Because here we are, a billionaire with access to the government, the NIH, BARDA, DOD, Peter Thiel, the Clintons, Trump. We're meant to believe he's the underdog. Let's go back to the title of the podcast. You're being lied to about cancer, how it's caused, and how to stop it. And after listening to the whole podcast, I'm honestly disappointed. At best, Patrick Soon-Shiong is misinformed and short-sighted. At worst, he's just another big pharma billionaire selling another product, pitching a limited hangout, BioShield, the next big solution to a problem they helped create. There was no mention of fasting. There was no mention of metabolic health, no mention of Thomas Seyfried, no mention of keto, mitochondrial repair, natural therapies, no mention of ivermectin, fenbendazole or repurposed drugs, no mention of the work of William Macus or ignored scientists. Just allopathic, mainstream, patentable, monetizable biotech gospel. So please, stop putting your faith in these people. Stop waiting for a false messiah to emerge from within the system. They're not your friends. They're not people to celebrate or to look up to or to congratulate. You will find the solutions in metabolic health, in fasting, in mitochondrial repair, in terrain theory, and in decades of suppressed research and dissident voices who have been cancelled, censored, and persecuted. This podcast was not a breakthrough. It was a distraction. It was a distraction. And as for you're being lied to about cancer and how it's caused and how to stop it, folks, you still are. I love you. Doc Malik. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.